Last time we ended with glycolysis and it only releasing 10% of energy. We've got to use that oxygen in order to get even more energy. We call this aerobic respiration because respiration and breathing require oxygen. So let's go through the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Krebs cycle, obviously named after Hans Krebs in 1937. Nice. It takes pyruvic acid, that's what's gotten from glycolysis, breaking down glucose into two pyruvic acids, breaks that all the way down into carbon dioxide, and a series of steps to extract that energy. Because remember, we could break down glucose really quickly, but then we'd lose all the energy. Okay? There's other names for the Krebs cycle: citric acid cycle, TCA cycle, tricarboxylic acid cycle, but we'll try and stick with the Krebs cycle. All right, so here's a picture. Okay? I take pyruvate in, and actually right away I get rid of a carbon dioxide and create something called acetyl-CoA, which is really what goes in. As you can see, as it goes around, we have created a bunch of high-energy electron carriers. Remember NADH, basically NAD picks up an electron, becomes NADH, and it's going to take that high-energy electron somewhere else. Also, we lose our other two CO2s, so we've lost all three carbons from pyruvic acid. We create some energy here. We actually create GTP, which is very similar to ATP, but very little is created. Okay? And then we produce more high energy electron carriers. FADH2, another high energy electron carrier, another molecule that's just storing that energy very temporarily to get it to the electron transport chain. All right, so in detail, pyruvic acid enters the mitochondria. One carbon is broken off immediately and lost to the air. That's what we breathe out. Okay? The other two carbons combine to make acetyl-CoA, which then goes into the Krebs cycle and combines with the 4-carbon molecule to start the cycle. Okay? In step B, that citric acid is broken down into more different 4-carbon molecules, releasing 2 more CO2s and lots of high energy electrons. So eventually, through our 2 pyruvic acids, we make an ATP for each one, 4 NADHs for each one, and an FADH2, another high energy electron carrier. Those are the products of the Krebs cycle. Those high energy electrons have to go to the electron transport chain to be any use to us, because just as NADH, it doesn't do us any good. So in steps the electron transport chain. This works very similar to the electron transport chain in photosynthesis, only it's at the end instead of the beginning. And it's using the energy from glucose instead of using the energy from sunlight. But it uses those high energy electrons to produce a lot of ATP, and it helps recycle NADH and FADH2 so that we can continue to go through glycolysis, we can continue to make energy. Okay? And this is located on that inner membrane of the mitochondria. Remember, the mitochondria has that folded inner membrane. That's where the electron transport chain works. So here's a picture. All right, you have your mitochondria. You have high energy electron carrier coming in and giving an electron to the first protein. That electron then goes through a series of proteins, okay? And its energy is siphoned off and used to pump hydrogens across the membrane. Okay? So now we have a bunch of hydrogens above the membrane, bunch of hydrogens up here, not a lot of hydrogens down here. So through diffusion, they go back through ATP synthase, just like the electron transport chain of photosynthesis. And that ATP synthase molecule works to convert ADP into ATP. Now, when the electron is done, when the electron has gone through the electron transport chain, we need something to pick it up. And here is the entire reason you breathe oxygen. Because this oxygen here picks up that electron and creates water. Okay? Without the oxygen you breathe in, to stand at the end of the electron transport chain and receive that hydrogen, the whole system stops. Okay? It's like a little kid that won't get off the bottom of the slide. The whole slide piles up, and then energy production stops. So that's why without oxygen, you stop producing as much energy, because the electron transport chain can't work. And if the electron transport chain can't work, then you don't get any more NADH. And if you don't, or NAD plus, you don't recycle your NADH into NAD plus. And if you don't recycle your NADH into NAD plus, the Krebs cycle can't happen, glycolysis can't happen, and you run out of energy. Okay? So oxygen, vitally important, just because it's the last thing we use in the process, and it stops the process if you don't have it. All right, so steps. Our electron carriers pass their electron into the chain. These electrons pass from protein to protein. When they reach the end, they combine with oxygen, form water, and oxygen is that last electron acceptor. Very important in aerobic respiration. Without it, the process stops. Okay. As the electrons fall down that chain, their energy is stolen and used to pump hydrogens across the membrane. Then you have lots of hydrogens on one side, little hydrogen on the other. Think diffusion, hydrogens move from high to low concentration. We also have a charge difference, which helps with this diffusion. As the hydrogens pass through ATP synthase, they create more ATP. On average, the energy from one NAD gives 3 ATP. There are some exceptions. The NADHs made in glycolysis have to get into the mitochondria, so they don't make quite as many, but that's on average that much. So if we add it all up, glycolysis gives us 2 ATP but doesn't require any oxygen. The Krebs cycle in the electron transport chain gives us 34, I don't even have that many fingers, 34 ATP. So if you combine that in animals, we create 36 ATP from one glucose molecule. Okay? For waste, we produce carbon dioxide and water. Okay? And really, this is only about 38% of the energy in glucose. So while we break it down and do the steps slowly, we still don't get all the energy we could have. Okay? Some of that other energy is what is used to fuel our body temperature, keep our metabolism up. Okay? Some of that energy is just lost. But we get a lot more of the energy through the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain than just through glycolysis. All right, we'll try and get through this in 2 minutes left. Hey, so at the beginning of exercise, we have 3 ways to get ATP. Okay? You can use glycolysis, fermentation, or the Krebs cycle. Your cells don't store a ton of ATP, so we've got to have a way to replenish it. Okay? So for quick energy, usually like a short sprint, you'll use all the ATP we have stored up. Up to about 90 seconds, you're going to use lactic acid fermentation because there's not enough oxygen in your muscles to continue to do aerobic respiration. So you do glycolysis, then lactic acid fermentation, so you can keep doing glycolysis. This builds up lactic acid and gives your muscles burn, gives that burning sensation. So we need to transport that lactic acid to the liver to get rid of it. If you're doing exercise longer than 90 seconds, we've got to use cellular respiration or we don't have enough energy. Okay? This means you have to pace yourself so you can breathe well enough to get oxygen into your cells so they can do the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Okay? First, we break down glycogen, which is a store of sugar, glucose, and after about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, we break down fats. Okay? So it's not until you've exercised for about 15 to 20 minutes to where you start actually burning fat. Okay. I'll leave this slide up there to compare them. I'm running out of time. We've got about 30 seconds, but basically they're exact opposites. Okay? Reactions are reverses of each other. What one produces, the other gives off. What cellular respiration produces, photosynthesis gives off. Okay? Cellular respiration, one last thing. Remember, every living thing does cellular respiration. Okay? Photosynthesis is only in plants, algae, and some bacteria.